Hi, thank you all so much for joining this meeting virtually. We'll get started in a couple of seconds here. Hi, thank you all for joining this meeting. We're going to get started in a couple of seconds here. So we're going to wait for a few people to join us and then we'll get started. Hi, if you're just joining us, thank you so much for joining this meeting. We'll get started in a few minutes. We're giving everyone an opportunity to join us. Thank you for your patience. If you have trouble seeing or hearing any of us during this meeting, please send a message to the panelists. That way we can ensure that everyone has an opportunity to see and hear all of our panelists as they present. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Before we get started, a quick note on the meeting. If there's a power outage or technical issue and we're unable to resume within 10 minutes, the meeting will be recorded and uploaded onto YouTube, and you'll receive a link via email. We'd like to make sure that everyone has a chance to ask questions following this presentation. If we see a high volume of hands raised or questions in the Q&A, we may need to limit each person to 2 questions initially. Once everyone in the queue has had a chance to speak, we'll circle back for any follow-up. Thanks in advance for your understanding and cooperation. Now I'll hand it over to Supervisor Martinez to begin the meeting.
Thank you, Tiffany. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. It's nice to see all of you. My name is Monica Martinez, and for some of you, this is the first time I'm seeing you in person. I'm your new 5th District County Supervisor, elected about a year ago, and it's a true honor to serve the 5th District and the San Lorenzo Valley, including this part of the community. So I want to welcome everyone to the Big Basin Water Town Hall. This is hosted jointly tonight between my office as well as our court-appointed receiver for Big Basin, Servium by Right LLP. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to be here today and to get some updates on behalf of the work that's been done on behalf of your water system. So I'm going to start off, he's not in the room today, but I wanted to send a thank you to Boulder Creek Fire Chief Mark Bingham and the team for allowing us to use this space. I believe he's out on a call right now, so maybe he'll make an appearance a little bit later. But it really is wonderful to have a space like this to host a meeting for our community. And so our 5th District office, starting with Supervisor Bruce McPherson and now myself in this seat, as well as the county overall, have engaged now for more than 5 years in what's become quite a successful effort to help stabilize drinking and wastewater services for those living within the footprint of Big Basin water, many of whom lost their homes in the CZ Lightning Complex fire, including some of you who are here tonight. And I just want to use this moment to share that this is an issue that I followed really closely just as a resident and neighbor of all of you. I live in Felton. I'm somebody who have worked in public service my whole life and really believe that clean, safe, reliable water is a human right. And I'm deeply committed to ensuring that every person who lives in this district, in our county, and in our region has access to that. So it really is an honor, again, and a privilege to be able to continue the good work that's been done by the county to get us here today. In this vital work, we have cultivated and maintained productive working relationships with you as ratepayers in partnership with the court-appointed receiver. We also deeply appreciate our partnerships with the State Water Resources Control Board's Division of Drinking Water, the Central Coast Regional Board, the Office of the Attorney General, the Public Utilities Commission, and Santa Cruz LAFCO. I also want to acknowledge the participation of our state elected delegation, Assemblymember Gail Pellerin, Senator John Layard, and their staff members. We will be joined a little bit later by a couple staff members from both of those offices. I think they're running a little bit behind schedule, but they are also deeply committed to this issue, and I'm glad they're here. They're going to be here. I also want to welcome Jason Lillian, the director of San Lorenzo Valley Water District, who's here joining us today as a listener. Among the speakers tonight, you'll hear from David Reed, our director of the county's Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience, better known as OR3. He'll be discussing the county's role in helping to support the Big Basin water, including management of the Department of Water Resources grant that has been instrumental in managing the system. I also want to acknowledge a couple of county staffers who played big roles in their support of Big Basin water ratepayers, including Sierra Ryan. Hi, Sarah, there you are. The county's water resources manager, who's here tonight, as well as Carolyn Burke, who's the assistant director of community development infrastructure special projects. She's not able to be here tonight, but she is definitely following this issue. And I want to thank Tiffany Martinez, controlling the Zoom over there, the public information officer for CDI, for the logistical help tonight, as well as a couple of my staffers. We have J.M. Brown in the corner, he gets a clap, and Megan Renfrew over there, who's also helped you in the and as you checked in. So we also have a number of partners on the Zoom tonight and a number of ratepayers as well. It looks like our count is about, my eyes are not that good. How many people are on the Zoom?
We have 37.
37 people. So thank you for joining us. Unfortunately, you can't join in the snacks. We have an abundance here, so next time come in person, but we're glad you're here listening in. Thank you. So a few additional housekeeping items for you. Thank you for signing in when you got here. If you have not signed in, please consider doing so we can capture your information and make sure that we can send you any information for follow-up as needed. We also have restrooms that are by the front door that you came in. Again, help yourself to the snacks if you're here in person. And let's see, the emergency exit is going to be the same door that you came in as well. So please exit that way in the event of an emergency. So tonight we're going to have two short updates from both Director Reed and Satya Gala of GEI Consultants before turning the room over to Nicholas Jabber, the Big Basin Water Project Manager for the court-appointed receiver. Again, that's a mouthful. Yes, it is. And to kick us off, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jabber's colleague, Isabel Cruz, an attorney from Servium by Right. She'll provide a brief overview, and after the other speakers, we'll have time for Q&A, both for those of you who are here in the room, as well as for those of you on the Zoom. So again, thank you for attending, and now I'm going to turn it over to Isabel.
Thank you, Supervisor Martinez, for that warm welcome. Good evening, and once again, welcome. We're delighted to be here with you today at this, our fourth town hall. As we have successfully stabilized the water system, we look towards the future of the BBWC. Today's presentation will highlight the ongoing projects and collaborations the BBWC has had with the state, county, and private sectors to advance the BBWC's goals and aspirations. One such area of continued discussion has been the options of governance for the BBWC, including consolidation. As you may recall, consolidation, in simple terms, is a merging of water utility systems, in which one water system is dissolved and their customers are provided services by another existing water system. We continue to discuss the prospects of consolidation of the BBWC with local and regional water utility systems. To date, we have met with the California American Water Company, Golden State Water, Great Oaks Water Company, San Jose Water Company, and San Lorenzo Valley Water District. The BBWC has also joined the California Water Association, where we have met with smaller private water utilities to discuss consolidation. Overall, the discussions have been fruitful. Consolidation is no easy task, and so there remains lots of work to be done. Continuous outreach has proven to be pivotal in furthering the prospect of consolidation. And so we will continue to maintain the established relationships with the various water systems. Funding of the various needs of the BBWC is also an area of frequent discussion. With the help of the California Water Association and Moonshot Missions, the receiver applied for the technical assistance program offered through the State Water Resource Control Board. The Technical Assistance Program funding program assists in developing, funding, and implementing the needs of the drinking water systems. The BBWC specifically asked for assistance in addressing critical infrastructure, capacity, and compliance needs, including the pre-design of a surface water treatment plant to replace the facility lost in the 2020 CZU fire. Discussions with the State Water Resource Control Board are ongoing. We hope to have a more definite answer as to whether the BBWC has been approved to partake in the technical assistance program by early next year. The BBWC is advancing day by day. However, what the BBWC has accomplished and what remains for the BBWC to achieve cannot be done without collaboration. Tonight, you will hear from two of our collaborators. The first, Dave Reed, from the County of Santa Cruz OR3. The second is Satya Gala, who will be appearing virtually from GEI Consultants. The Department of Water Resources funded a feasibility study in which GEI Consultants was hired to comprehensively investigate, evaluate, and establish the parameters of the best option to increase BBWC source. As will be highlighted tonight, collaboration with and between the state, county, GEI, and the other programs and associations has created the momentum for the BBWC to move towards the future. And so without further ado, I will transfer to Dave to give you a more comprehensive summary of what the county is up to.
Thank you. So I'll try to be brief. As we've discussed perhaps in other meetings, but for those of you who haven't been to those or online, the county and our office, the Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience, was able to secure a grant for $850,000 through the Department of Water Resources. And we've been in close collaboration with the implementing entity, which is the receiver, on taking those funds to build a more resilient system for all of you. And so through their good work and through the operators' good work, there's a lot of progress that you'll hear about later today. Our role is really just in administering that grant, making sure that the funds get to the receiver through the work that they're doing. And then we make sure that all of our compliance and reporting is handled at the state level. There's one small remaining, or depending on your perspective, large remaining task of that grant. We've expended nearly $700,000 of that grant on behalf of all of you to stabilize your system, or the receiver and the operator have. One piece that we're going to be managing at the county is an additional analysis to look at the existing proposed expansion of a connection, an intertie that San Lorenzo Valley Water District is looking at to bring towards the Brackenbray and Forest Springs developments, and looking at the feasibility of what it would take to take that planned expansion and bring it all the way to connect into Big Basin. So we have a consultant hired, actually GEI and Satya, to do that analysis, to say, okay, what would it take and what are the steps that would need to be taken? It's not a full engineering design of that interconnection, but it's taking the next step to evaluating that connection. So that analysis, we're going to start that and hopefully have that done by early next year to help inform next steps for the receiver and all of you. With that, that's the extent of kind of the what in terms of OR3's role and the county's role. And then obviously we coordinate closely with the supervisor's office in this regard as well. So that's all I have to share for this evening for now, and I can hand it over to Nick.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. And I have to say, you're very humble about describing what you've been up to with your office. I will get to that a bit more in depth. For now, I'd like to say thank you, everybody, for being here, both in person and virtually. I am Nicholas Jaber. I basically manage the Big Basin project for my firm, which is the court-appointed receiver. Most of you probably know that. I recognize, I think, 95% of you from being here prior. So thank you for coming again. I know how it is as a member of the audience to hear the thank yous, and it can get annoying, but I do want to do that. So just bear with me for a moment. It's important to me to say a few thank yous. So first to the fire chief. I see the truck pulling up, so he's obviously busy right now, but we really appreciate him accommodating us here tonight. Supervisor Martinez, of course, to the venerable supervisor, and we really appreciate you carrying on the work of Supervisor McPherson. So we really do look forward to working with you. And for the venerable supervisor, the venerable team, J.M. Brown, really, he's one of the first people that ever called me when we were appointed, and really one of my first connections to the county. So thank you for all you do, J.M. And Ray Spencer Hope, who I'm not sure I see right now, but thank you to Ray as well. I also want to recognize Tiffany Martinez. Thank you, Dave, big time. Annie from OR3 as well, the entire OR3 team, Sierra Ryan, Carolyn Burke, and countless others. Thank you for all the unseen but deeply felt work that you do on behalf of the county for this community. And I would also like to welcome all the state officials and the representatives who are, I think, appearing mostly on the virtual Zoom. Notably the Honorable Senator Laird and his office representative, Kalita, as well as the Assemblywoman Pellerin with Lizette Jones. Also want to recognize the DDW, that's Department of Drinking Water officials, Laura Mooney, Jonathan Weininger, Kyle Graff, and Stefan Kahina, as well as representatives from the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. That would be Jennifer Epp and Daniel Walderguy. All our representatives from the PUC, that's the Public Utilities Commission, Jessica Warner and Joshua Silverstein, and Joe Serrano from LAFCO. Okay, so we just want to say thank you to all of those folks. Now to the substance. As Isabel mentioned, we've in some way, shape, or form done 4 town hall meetings, including this one. We've heard a little bit from my colleague Isabel and Dave, but I realized that it's actually Satya's turn to speak and not mine. So stop speaking and let Satya from GEI speak to you just for a moment. I'll be back.
Thank you, Nick. Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. Okay. Well, thank you, Nick, and thank you, David. Good evening, everyone. I'm Satya Gala with GEI Consultants. We are a consulting company for Department of Water Resources. GEI Consultants have been helping California Department of Water Resources for more than a decade on a lot of their drought programs. So we have been requested by California Department of Water Resources to help on a feasibility study for the Big Basin. I have a few slides to share on what are we doing and where we are, and I'm going to share my screen here. Right. Can you guys let me know when you can see it?
Yes.
Thank you. So as David mentioned, we are doing a planning level feasibility study. It is not an engineering feasibility study, so it is a planning level feasibility study. And I would like to give everybody an understanding of what does it mean and what are we doing and where we are in the process. So the main agenda for today is I'm going to talk about the approach for the feasibility study. After talking about the approach, I want to highlight what the goals and objectives are for the feasibility study. Then what are the alternatives we have formulated as part of the feasibility study. Once the alternatives have been formulated, we've been working on evaluating those alternatives based on a certain criteria. So I'll be talking about what this criteria is. And I'll close the presentation by giving a status update on where we are and when we plan to finish this feasibility study. At a very high level, what does a feasibility study include is generally 6 steps. One of the first steps in the process is we have to formulate a project team to understand who are the key stakeholders and the interested parties in the planning level study. Once we formulate the project team, we sit down with them and clearly establish what the goals and objectives of the feasibility study are. Once we establish the goals and objectives, we have to understand what are the existing conditions, identify what the challenges are and some opportunities that are existing, and tie it back to the goals and objectives. Based on these challenges and opportunities, alternatives are generally formulated to see what can be taken forward. Once the alternatives are formulated, you have to evaluate them against each other to make sure which one kind of comes forward. And during the evaluation process, which has a lot of criteria involved, we do come up with a recommended option for implementation, and all of this will be documented in a feasibility report. At a very high level, these are the main 6 steps in a feasibility study. Before we dive in, as I mentioned, the first step is a project team. Obviously, we did meet with the project team, and the project team consists of the BBWC receiverships, the owners, the Santa Cruz County, and the California Department of Water Resources, which is funding this feasibility study. We also have a lot of stakeholders or interested parties. This does not capture everybody here, but at a very high level, it does include the San Lorenzo Valley Water District. It includes the Santa Cruz Water Department, City of Santa Cruz Water Department, the Boulder Creek Fire Protection District Fire Chief Bingham, who has been very helpful in identifying the fire protection needs, the California Division of Drinking Water, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and California Public Utility Commission. These are all the interested parties. We have been getting some feedback in formulating the alternatives and evaluating them. Once the project team has been formulated, we sat down with them to formulate what the goal of the study is. After a couple of iterations, we have zeroed on the goal of the feasibility study is to identify the most feasible solution for restoring a safe, affordable, reliable, and resilient water supply for the Big Basin. And there's a lot of key terms in here. And most importantly, we want to have the water supply that is safe, affordable, reliable, and also resilient so that we don't run into this situation in the future again. Based on this goal, there were several objectives that have been identified. We want to restore and ensure sufficient water capacity for the future demand. We want to ensure compliance with all the water quality standards. We want to support the fire protection and public safety. One of the objectives is to maximize the affordability and long-term financial sustainability. We want to minimize the environmental and implementation risk while promoting integration. And last but not the least, we want to come up with an alternative that has a stakeholder acceptance. As you could see, all of these objectives kind of help in achieving the overarching goal of the feasibility study, which is to find the most feasible solution for a safe, affordable, reliable, and resilient water supply for Big Basin. Once that goals and objectives have been identified and going through a lot of identifying the challenges and opportunities, there were 6 alternatives that have been formulated. I will not be going into a lot of detail in these alternatives. However, these 6 alternatives are, the first one is restoring the surface water treatment plant back to its capacity. The second option is a modular or packaged surface water treatment, which is a combination of is a phase level combination of full surface water treatment plant, so that we could build something initially and then expand it into a full-blown surface water treatment plant into the future. The third alternative is just rely on the groundwater, which is the groundwater wells that are already existing. The fourth alternative is a combination of both surface water and the groundwater system. The fifth alternative is consolidation. And the sixth alternative is the emergency or interim measures that can be used for a much longer term than originally planned for. If you take a step back, these were all the potential feasible alternatives that are available that can be that can provide the Big Basin a long-term solution. However, each one of those has their own advantages and disadvantages. When you have a matrix like this, where each alternative can bring their own strengths and weaknesses, you have to evaluate them on a plane level to see which one kind of rises to the top. And how we do that is based on an evaluation criteria. And the evaluation criteria could be a lot of things, but in this particular context, we are looking at engineering and technical feasibility. We want to look at how each of the alternative kind of ranks in terms of a design, operations, in terms of long-term operations, and also integration to what's currently existing infrastructure. You want to look at the economic feasibility, which is the evaluation of the capital, operation, and maintenance costs. You want to look at the regulatory and legal feasibility on the complexity and the risk associated with each of these alternatives. After that, you also want to look at the environmental feasibility, because once you want to develop any of these alternatives, you have to assess the potential for any adverse or beneficial impacts it may have on the environment. So environmental feasibility is very critical. After that, you got to look at the financial feasibility, which is the long-term cost effectiveness. And again, as I mentioned before, the last but not the least is stakeholder acceptance. You have to look at how any of these alternatives can be accepted with an anticipated acceptance with the community, not only with the community, but also the agency support, including public perception and local agency alignment. So these are the 6 evaluation criteria we are currently using to evaluate the 6 alternatives I have mentioned in the previous slide. Where we are right now, we have finished formulating the project team, which is a step 1. We have established the goals and objectives, completed step 2. We have identified the opportunities and constraints, and then formulated the alternatives as in step 4. We are currently in step 5, where we are using the evaluation criteria to evaluate the alternatives, and we are working with the project team in the evaluation process, and we hope to come up with a recommended option within the next month. And we are also simultaneously working on documenting all of this into a feasibility report. And our current plan and timeline is to complete the report by Christmas or New Year, which is about 4 to 6 weeks away. With that, I'll take any questions.
We're going to do questions all at the end section.
Okay.
Okay, well, I hope I don't think I stole any of Satya's thunder, so sorry about that.
No worries, Nick.
Okay. Okay, one more housekeeping item. So every time I speak to you, I think I always begin with a brief description of what it means to be a court receiver. And it's going to be redundant, but it's critical to recall. And for any first-time listeners, I hope you'll listen to at least this part. A receiver is a neutral agent of the court. In this case, we were appointed to serve as an agent of the Superior Court of the State of California in the County of Santa Cruz. There are 2 receiverships within the BWC umbrella: the drinking water system receivership and the wastewater receivership. As a receiver, our job is to assume possession and control of the drinking water system, including all of its assets. And on the wastewater side, it was the same idea. The Moores are still the owners of Big Basin, though my firm is in full legal possession and control of the drinking water system. It is a bit of a legal fiction, if you will, the idea of a court receiver. But the bottom line is that the owners are still the owners. My firm hasn't just become the owner of the system. The court primarily expects us to do 3 things. 1, to stabilize the system. 2 is to protect, defend, manage the affairs of, and maximize the value of the systems. And 3 is to ultimately transfer ownership of the systems to the best available interested third party with requisite technical, managerial, and financial capacity. A mouthful. The DDW folks like to call this TMF, technical, managerial, financial. So those are our three goals or three missions, if you will, as I understand them as the receiver. Regarding the wastewater treatment plant, I'll keep the remarks brief. I get to do that because the county took over the wastewater treatment plant last year, and we are very grateful for that. Since July of 2024, when the county took over the operational control of the wastewater plant, we've obtained the Public Utilities Commission's approval to transfer the license to the county. And we have now transferred all real property, i.e. land and other assets, to the county as well. The only remaining step at this point is to end the receivership. And we intend to do that within the next few weeks by application to the court. That will leave us with one Big Basin receivership, which is the drinking water system. Of course, the drinking water system receivership is far more complicated than the wastewater treatment plant receivership. We have over 1,200 people that are reliant on the drinking water system. We have something like 550 connections, and the issues are more just complicated, not just in scope, but in nature, and we'll get into that a bit more tonight. At a glance, this is kind of the conclusion before the meat and potatoes in the middle. So the short version of my conclusion for tonight is that think back to those three missions that I described. We've largely stabilized the system, and I'm going to tell you about why I think that in a few moments here. That stabilizing will never fully end, but by and large, I believe we have stabilized the system. The second mission, which is a bit more vague, is a matter of defense, management, maximizing of value. This mission is always going to be going. We'll never finish that job, never fully finish maximizing the value or defending the system. I'll give you some examples of how we're doing that, and I think making progress. And then finally, on that third prong, it's third in order also because we have to do enough stabilizing and managing to be able to appeal to somebody to take us over. But we are making some progress there, though admittedly, that's a very difficult task. So we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. Okay, so three subjects. The first one is much heavier than the other two. So subject one, how have we stabilized the system with our partners, government partners, and of course with Cypress? And by the way, Miles is sitting in the back. Miles Farmer is the president and owner of Cypress Water Systems. That is the man, the myth, and the legend right there. Yeah. So, Miles, once I get through this prong, I'm going to ask Miles to come up just for a moment and introduce himself. Recall that, and just a quick walk down memory lane here, at the time that we were appointed in September of 2023, the system was in total and complete failure, and nobody could tell you about that better than Miles, or probably any one of you. At least from the inside of the system, Miles can tell you about that better than anybody. And we assumed possession and control with a mere $127 balance in the operating account. I always mention that because I do think it's important to remember where we were. Weekly or bi-weekly outages were a norm. And even when water was flowing, customers report to me that they rarely knew if they were subject to state mandated blow water notices or not. Customer billing was decentralized, meters were unmapped, and in many cases malfunctioning or non-existent. So those days are over. That's the reality. And if anybody, and I think most people who cold call me know I usually answer my phone, and if I don't, I call you back. Right, Dennis? Yeah, okay. If anybody feels like anything I mentioned is still happening, I ask you to call me personally. I'd like to get to a few specifics and metrics supplied by Miles just this afternoon. So these are extremely current. So number one, and this is a big one, well number 4, as it is kind of unceremoniously labeled because it's literally our only source, is maintaining system levels, so keeping up with demand, but it is only running 8 to 12 hours a day now. So that is massive. And thank you, Miles, for that. To put things in perspective, the well was running 24/7 up until and through to this point a few months ago. And that's another key detail. This isn't like only today the well's running 8 to 12 hours. It's now an average that I think it's not perfectly scientific, but we can say that we are reasonably confident. Looking at now, I think 2.5 months-ish of data, the well has run an average of 8 to 12 hours a day for the last 2.5 months. And it is, again, keeping up with demand. We are just coming off of the hot season. That is also critical to keep in mind. Traditionally, this is kind of the period over the last few months where we have problems, where we have to ship in tens of thousands of dollars of water a month. So, and we were there, so we know that too well. So in a nutshell, for the last 2.5 months, the well has only run a third of the time it used to have to run, and it is completely supporting customer demand at a rate of about 130 to 140 gallons a minute. No importing of water. Jason, we appreciate you keeping the intertie connection on for us. We really do. We still pay our base charge every month. You know, we don't want to get overly confident, but we can be excited about this because this is a big deal. The Jameson tank and Tradewinds tank. So these are our 2 largest storage tanks in the system. The Jameson tank feeds the vast majority of the system. Tradewinds obviously is up at elevation. They're both maintaining optimal levels. 19 feet for Jameson, which is a 210,000 gallon tank, and 14 feet for Tradewinds, which is a 325,000 gallon tank. And these are the optimal levels as Miles has defined based on all of the factors that you would want to consider. Cypress, operationally, so that also means personnel-wise. Cypress is physically present at the water system daily, and it is doing everything that is necessary to keep water on and safe. So Cypress is regularly responding to water leaks, customer complaints, and repairs. And Miles kind of ballparks that second prong beyond the just daily response at 2 to 3 times a week. So they're always out here, not just doing the norm, but fixing problems and being responsive to customers. Cypress has completed way too many upgrades and repairs and retrofits for me to possibly list. And I'm actually realizing that I wrote here, I will note just a few, and I have 2 pages of bullet points. So I'm kind of off the cuff, or I'm going to cherry pick a few. Year by year. Okay, so 2023, we took over late in 2023. And you have to understand that before we took over, Cypress was already at the helm. Cypress was already acquainting itself with the system. We had also recall the Central States Water Resources private company from Missouri that when we were appointed had entered into a purchase and sale contract to buy the water company. And Cypress was serving as its local operator. So Cypress has been around longer than we have. I'm going to start from the receivership forward here. So the operational theme, if you will, that's not too cheesy, of 2023 I like to define it like this: moment to moment emergency response. Keep the system running at all costs. So when we took over, Central States was backing out with no notice. We had literally no money in the account. The county agreed to extend an operational bridge, an emergency bridge. Obviously, grants take time. So we had this severe worry for many weeks and even months that the system would just shut down. The lights would go off. That did not happen. But that theme did continue through the last few months of 2023. What were we doing? Well, Cypress was setting up rental generators at crucial locations, namely well 4 and the intertie. Water deliveries. Cypress was shipping in water on physical trucks. We also worked closely with San Lorenzo. One of the first things we did to beef up the intertie, and so we continue to be very appreciative of that fact. When we took over, the intertie was only doing 15 gallons a minute, and thanks to San Lorenzo's willingness to work with us, we were able to very rapidly increase that to 60 gallons a minute, and that kept the system running. At that time, we were using every single bit of flow on that intertie. Cypress also installed duplex booster stations at the well tank. What does that mean? Booster pumps that boost the water that's stored directly by the well all the way to the Jameson tank. So critical. When those boosters don't work, levels reduce and eventually deplete. SCADA systems, you'll hear that acronym a lot. And so I did have to write that down here. SCADA. Miles?
Supervisory control and data acquisition.
Thank you. Supervisory control and data acquisition. So SCADA devices were not present largely at the system before we took over. What does that mean? Well, you had physical timers deciding when tanks get water. You can obviously imagine the problems with that. So SCADA was installed, and also a 5,000 gallon tank at Rosita to replace an old rusted out tank. 2024 operational theme. So we're slowly gaining some footing on the system. And 2024, I like to think of as this transition period from pure, unadulterated emergency to providing water more safely and sustainably and reliably. Not perfect yet, but it's kind of this transition here. So operationally, what did we do? Well, in 2024, Cypress and my office together rebuilt the entire customer database and integrated new billing software. We did not have one customer list when we took over. We didn't know who most of our customers were. Miles went out there days on days on days on end, mapping and plotting the GPS geocoordinates of every single over 500 service connection meters, every hydrant, every valve, and every tank, and populated this in a cloud mapping system that can be accessed by the fire chief, by a prospective purchaser, by a regulator, by the county. Rehab's well 5. We don't talk about well 5 a lot. It's kind of a very low performing well that's tree branched right off of well 4 effectively. We call this the American well because I guess when Miles found it, it had a little American flag staked in it. But formally, it's the well number 5. VFDs were installed, so these help manage power on the pumps. Major leaks in 2024, multiple were repaired, located repaired. 5 leaks, 10 to 40 gallons per minute were repaired. That's massive. When you're getting 140 gallons a minute out of your well, that's massive. You'll start to see the thing. You'll ask, how on earth is the well now operating 8 to 12 hours? So how did that happen? Efficiency. Pumps that work, leaks that are repaired. We're getting the same gallons per minute, but we're running the well a third to half the time because the system's not losing as much water. We also set up a 24-hour call center through Cypress to receive customer calls after hours. Maintained all the access roads back behind fallen leaf. Verified all the customer meters for proper function, replaced between 70 and 100 in 2024 alone. Removed and replaced the Oberst tank. Installed automatic level control for the Oberst tank transfer pump. Replaced the Camino Verde pump and installed VFD control. Performed state required lead service line inventory. This is a big one. Inspecting and documenting whether or not there's lead present in over 500 service connections. Rebuilt the Tradewinds automatic transfer switch and the generator, the diesel generator up there. SCADA installed basically across the board. And another big one, installed another backup booster pump in a duplex configuration at the well tank. So last year we had one of our only outages ever when PG&E went down for a number of days during the storms. One of our boosters fried. And that really impressed upon us the importance of having backup. So now we have a duplex booster station and they basically oscillate. And so we're not overworking any one booster. So we don't think that'll happen again. 2025 operational theme, increase system efficiencies and resilience. Okay. So number one, we've actually started to provide water to other small water companies when they need it. So that says a lot. Both Brackenbury and Forest Springs have requested water service and we provided them. We're averaging 3 leak repairs a month that are sizable. So more evidence as to how we're increasing the efficiencies of the system. Located and tested all accessible backflow devices per state regulations. Backflow testing is a big deal, especially with some new regulations that have come out. We've also completed the preliminary requirements for a cross-connection control plan, another new requirement at the state level. Okay, and finally, I will mention the Hill House situation. Dennis is here, and so a few years ago, Dennis stood up in the Q&A, and I was having a pretty good night. You know, I thought everybody was pretty happy, and Dennis was nice. I'm just giving him a hard time, but he gave me a hard time about Hill House Road, and I really didn't appreciate what they were dealing with up there until Dennis did that. So I'm very appreciative that he did that, and it's taken us this amount of time, but literally as of today, we can report Miles has been physically on site for the last number of days. Hill House is formally reconnected. And this was the one zone of the system that was left behind after the fire. And I'm really sorry it took this long, and we did everything we could. And so thank you for bearing with us. Right now, so Jonathan and Kyle at the state level don't get too worried. Miles is submitting all the requisite documents to start that up correctly. So
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you, Miles. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up really quickly here. Famous last words, but forward-looking operationally, we're still only on quad 1, but it's the heavy one, like I said. Forward-looking source. So this is the connection to the GEI study. The purpose, in the simplest terms of what GEI is doing, is to understand how we can increase our source capacity. What's the best way to get more source? To have a redundancy, an additional water delivery possibility beyond just the little well that could, well number 4. And that dovetails with the state's gravest concern and the county's gravest concern, which is, what if this well stops working? That is something that I don't like to think about, but I have to think about, and I'm sure all of you think about it probably even more than I do because it's your water. All I can say right now is we're doing everything we possibly can to figure out what solution to implement and how to fund it. After the feasibility study, what happens? So it's not a full scope engineering level study. Okay, so how do we get that? Well, the feasibility study is basically going to tell us what we should do, considering all of the factors from an engineer's perspective. The next step is a technical assistance regimen, which is through the Department of Financial Assistance. We've already submitted that application, and in fact, I have to be careful how I describe this, but the application was, I guess, quasi-approved because it was assigned to an engineering firm, a different engineering firm. We did a site visit and we've been in talks. I am told just recently that the TA, technical assistance, is on hold right now. That was a little bit surprising to me. I'm not angry about it, but that's just the fact. We're going to try to figure out exactly why it was paused, noting that our application was approved in record time. That was part of it too. So I wouldn't be surprised if you want my opinion on it. My opinion is the TA folks thought, there would probably no harm in encouraging us to do an application because who knows how long it can take, knowing full well that the feasibility study really has to finish before we can go to the next step. So I think in a way it just happened too quickly and too well. And so now we're waiting for the feasibility study to round up. That's my opinion. So I'll keep you all updated on that and focus on the good news, which is that the Department of Financial Assistance has already basically given us a very important blessing on that. And that's due to our failing status of the system. I understand that too. So, from last year's economic study that this community's average median income median income is around $100,000, which is well above the threshold to be disadvantaged as a matter of law. And so disadvantage doesn't get us a lot of grant money. You have to be disadvantaged for a lot of the grant money, but failing does. So we are still failing. Remember that. But the good news there is that because we're failing, we do qualify for technical assistance. Okay, and that application is, I expect that to be reinitiated as soon as the feasibility study is over. Okay. How are we defending the system? This is prong 2. I'll make this a minute or less. How are we continuing to defend the system? And what do I mean by that? Legal and institutional defense, and manage the affairs of the system, getting the books in order, budgeting, conducting, financial planning, and securing rate increases. I mean, this is a very large subset of our duties, but just a few of the top level items that we're focused on. Number 1, we're defending Big Basin in 2 third-party lawsuits. One of those we've resolved. By resolved, I don't mean settled. I mean, we negotiated basically a solution where we all agree to dismiss the case. If you want more information about these, just ask. But number 2, the other case is a quiet title dispute, and I'm pretty confident that we're going to resolve that with a stipulated kind of settlement judgment, but not paying out, just a quiet title thing. So if you want more information about that, ask me. But we are literally defending third-party lawsuits on behalf of the Big Basin Water Company. We've hired CPAs, and we're about to hire a public utility specialist bookkeeper. We're retaining consultants to help us with our PUC filings, annual reports, general rate increases, and other necessary filings. Revenues, January 2024 to date, January 2024 being the first time we ever were capable of billing customers. $1,187,660.14. So $1,187,660.14. That's all of the customer revenue we've collected since January 2024. Average monthly is $53,000. Okay, finally, what are we doing to locate the best, willing, capable third party with all of that CMF that we talked about? Well, simply stated, we're engaging with anybody who will engage with us. That is very vague, but I am out of time. So that's effectively what we're doing. Ask in the Q&A if you want more specifics. We did attend the California Water Association annual conference a few weeks ago in Monterey. This is not like a feel-good conference. It's a really meaty conference. You know, it was fun too, but it was a meaty conference. We met, personally interacted with, exchanged information with probably over 15 water companies, San Jose Water included. And so we are speaking with anybody who will speak with us. That is what we're doing. Cypress Water has also indicated interest in purchasing the Big Basin Water Company. So that is something that we look forward to discussing in greater depth with Miles as he desires to. And we also met with Jason and his team, and also some county and state level folks a few months ago. This was a great meeting. And I say this lovingly, we've been trying to get that meeting for a long time, and we're very, very appreciative and excited about the fact that Jason and his board president were willing to do that. So we will, be following up with his team. But yeah. Bottom line, I don't think we're as tough of a sell as most people think we are. We've done a good job. Everybody's done a good job really rebuilding this water company. So I am hopeful if any other public or private investor of utilities out there are listening in on this for some reason, give us a call and walk the sites with Miles and I. We'd love to show you around. With that, continue please to direct, and this is for all of the customers watching, any service related inquiries directly to Cypress. The Big Basin Water Company has a website. We've had one now for a few years. Please use that. And oh yes, thank you. And with that, I just want to ask Miles to say a few words.
Good evening, Miles Farm, with Dr. Farm Services. Just want to say that we've been with you guys actually since 2021, doing services for the Moors. And being there for them in 2022, we were here as well. In 2023, we signed on as operators for them, and we're taking care of their reporting and other aspects. And when they asked us to step in for the wastewater plant, we did. And from there, it's really seemed like everything fell apart. And if someone would have asked us in the beginning to step in and do what we're doing now, I probably would took off. But it kind of happened organically, and we've kind of grown with you guys and kind of expanded, and it wasn't perfect, but it worked out. And we've been committed with you guys, and my company's actually grown and kind of merged to stay with you guys, and we're here, and we're committed, and we appreciate this job, and we're just always going to try to do our very best to keep your water on. And like Nick was saying, it's very rewarding from where we were in 2023 and 2024 from when is our water going to be back on, and now it's like, when are we going to get our bill? You know what I mean? So that's where everyone's at now, just showing how resilient it is now. So that's all I gotta say. Appreciate you guys, and good night.
Okay, Q&A.
Okay, we'll take some. Can you all hear this okay? Okay, great. We'll alternate between the room and the Zoom. And so we'll take questions here. Start with Anne.
I have 3 questions. The first one is the meeting being recorded and will be posted somewhere, I hope?
Yes, it's going to be posted on YouTube, and we are recording this meeting.
Thanks. Okay. Is there a way to get a copy of the presentation by, I'm sorry, I didn't write down his name, the fellow from GEI, Satya, I think it was. Or is that just gonna be part, if it's part of the recording, I guess that's okay.
Yes, it can absolutely be shared. So we will send a PDF to Tiffany, and you probably could share with the users.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful for some of us. Thank you. The last part was, at least at two different previous meetings, we had a whole lot of talk about the Moonshot Missions report. And I think I kind of understand where the GEI analysis, et cetera, comes in that's related to that. But for my refreshment and maybe other people's also, can somebody tell us how the two relate to each other?
Satya, would you like to tend to this question, or would you prefer I do it? In short, Anne's wondering how the Moonshot Missions report is different from what you're working on with the feasibility study.
I think it'll be more appropriate if you were involved, Nick. Probably take it, and then I can help if there's anything I need to chime in.
Thank you. Okay, so
Did it turn off? You gotta push it up for it to turn on. There should be a light.
it's on. The light's on, but it's not
Oh. Oh,
just okay. The Moonshot Mission study I would characterize as a broad sweep. The Moonshot Missions team looked at any and every area from financial to operational. The feasibility study is really about increasing source. So it is a deep, deep dive into how we get more source. And we will publish whatever comes out when it comes out.
Thank you. Okay, we'll take a couple of questions here from online.
so the first question we got online is, please let us know if Big Basin Water Company water is safe to drink. My dog refuses to drink it. It is a sign.
What kind of dog is it? All I will say is that I get an email every 7 to 14 days from a very serious state-approved water testing laboratory that does the battery of tests pursuant to the ultra-high state regulations that apply, like to the super double secret expectations that apply to failing water systems. So we have to do more testing than systems that aren't failing. So all I can say is that I personally receive and read the tests. I don't understand every single data point in there, but I can tell you that we have no issues, and those tests are consistently reviewed by the DDW team on a regular basis.
Okay, our next question is, any movement on drilling a secondary well?
I would just say that this is something we've specifically discussed with GEI. I am allowing GEI to come to its own conclusions without interfering too much. GEI knows that we have expressed interest in that possibility, and I believe that I can't remember which number it was, but I believe one of the feasibility study options was more ground water. So I believe they've looked at that, and we'll see what they come up with.
Okay. Mark asks, can you clarify what case was dismissed?
Yeah, this is a case that was brought by the trustee of the James Engelhard McPherson Living Trust. Now, yes, it's related to Supervisor McPherson, but I'm told that there's no financial overlap there, to the extent you're curious about that. The company repurchased shares that were owned by the McPherson Trust a number of years ago, apparently. and was on a payment plan to in 5 or 6 installments make $50,000 or $60,000 a year. The 4 out of the 5 or 5 out of the 6 payments were made before we were appointed. There's one outstanding payment that was not made. All I can say is that we had a nice discussion with council for the trust, and we agreed to consider that claim along with any other claims at the time of the final accounting. So at the end of the receivership, we agreed that we would consider their claim, and that's the same thing that we would do for any claimant. At the time that we're at the final accounting, we will look at the evidence and we'll make recommendations to court on that basis. So they were satisfied with that, and we're grateful that they were reasonable.
Do you have a question?
So the situation does sound like it's a real improvement over where we were 1 year, 2 years ago, but for the sake of clarity, can you give us some greater insight on what is the current financial runway? In other words, given the current financial reserves and projected income, how long can the company continue to operate as it is now?
Thank you. If you look at what it costs on the month to month to employ Cypress and to conduct normal emergency response and to pay for electricity and testing and chlorine, basically the bare necessities, we're pretty close to what we're averaging in terms of customer revenue. Now, in a way, that is a way over lean way of looking at any operation, because, well, why? What do I mean? Well, I'm not including the staff costs in there or really traditional overhead. So one of my other one-liners that you've heard a million times is court receivers are really expensive. We've been upfront about that the whole time, but we're not hiring a full-time any full-time employees. We have no employees. We have an independent contractor. We have other independent contractors. And so we're saving on some overhead. I guess if you wanted to look forward and think, okay, if a real company starts to manage to run this thing like a real company, if Cypress takes this thing over, there's going to be added cost on a month-to-month basis. The receiver's costs still have to be covered, but we're not considering that on a month-to-month level. We only go to the court and request payment every year or so. We've only done it once since we've been here now over 2 years for a portion of that. So hopefully that's enough color. What I can tell you is that I am deep in the books myself. We still have a lot of work to do in the books. There are a lot of things that we're still trying to organize and make sense of pre-existing liabilities wise. And we're making a lot of progress there. So the best way to answer your question is on a month-to-month basis, in terms of the strict bare necessities, customer revenue is sufficient to cover that stuff.
Thank you.
Okay. So the first thing I wanted to say is I think Cypress has done a wonderful job. Anytime I've called them, even on weekends, we've been out there immediately. So I'm very impressed with the work they've done. In previous meetings, you mentioned about people not having meters and people not paying. Does everybody have a meter now that uses our water?
Yes, I'm not aware of any person that is getting free water.
Great. And are people starting to pay you that weren't paying?
Yeah, I unfortunately don't have the statistics in front of me, but we still have a lot of people that aren't paying bills, but it's not as bad as it used to be. There's the simple way to put it.
Do you have an idea how you're going to fix that? Because I mean, this has been 5 years now, and we're all, kind of a co-op here.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, PG&E knows how to fix it.
Yes, they do. Yes. I appreciate your questions, and your point is well taken and duly noted. Thank you.
So this next question from Sean, I think was already pretty much answered regarding finances, but Sean said or asked, it was noted earlier that over 700,000 was spent so far out of the 800,000 emergency grant. What is the projected funding mechanism for both the receiver and operations costs once that grant is fully exhausted?
Short answer is general rate case through the CPUC. So raising customer rates, and we've been talking about that for years. We're going to do a CPI increase this year as well. So that's basically an inflationary adjustment. So customer rates, one way. As you are probably aware, we're applying to other sources for funding. So DFA, Department of Financial Assistance. So looking to other areas of the water board that are willing potentially to fund the critical studies and construction projects that we need. Look, kind of a subsidiary answer to that is right at the beginning of all of this, there was no money to pay anybody. Cypress was totally on credit. And by the way, Cypress has extended over the course of this hundreds of thousands of dollars when we weren't sure how we were going to get funded. So I do want to note that. But to answer the question, when you look at the bare necessities month to month, if we can describe them that way, being covered largely by customer revenue, okay, what isn't covered? So big projects, big maintenance, necessary infrastructure upgrades that are more than just an emergency repair or patch job. So those are the areas that are really at risk, so to speak, if we don't find alternative funding sources. We are doing a general rate case. It will be filed Q1 of next year, Q2 at the very latest. But otherwise, all I can say is don't worry so much about the operation working. We're making do on a month-to-month basis. And we front-loaded. The grant has allowed us to fix a lot of delayed maintenance, delayed broken stuff. So 80% of all the pumps in the system are brand new. We've replaced many small tanks, 5,000-gallon tanks. The 2 large tanks we're told are in good condition. Mainline piping, it's a little harder to really understand, but all I can say is that $700,000 of long overdue, massive infrastructure work isn't something you repeat every year. I think we're mostly covered on the month to month, but yes, we need to find additional funding to increase our source, to take on other big infrastructure projects, so on and so forth. The big one's going to be the surface water plant, if that's what they recommend. If they don't recommend that, whatever source option is recommended by GEI is going to be something that we request funding to build through DFA.
The next one isn't a question, but a comment. Miles, we appreciate that the system can be isolated so that a leak in one area doesn't affect everyone. We were getting boil water notices system-wide before regional isolation. The next question is, what is the status of the watershed parcels? There's been discussion about selling possibly on the open market. If sold, would Big Basin Water Company retention of water rights be required? And how could watershed protection and water quality be enforced?
There's a lot in there. Yes, we are still seeking to sell the large watershed parcel that goes all the way up to the peak. We are still in conversations with the Peninsula Open Space Trust and Semper Virens, although those talks have been a little less frequent lately. We do intend, and we've been open with them about this, we do intend to list the parcel openly so that the market can weigh in. price and value wise. With respect to the water rights issue, and Isabel, do you want to talk to this, or do you want me to do it? Okay. We've done quite a bit of research in our firm, and we've also sought the counsel of specialists, attorneys who work in water rights to kind of dissect that question. And the long and short of it is that except for one permitted water right, and there are multiple, there's only one permitted water right that actually resides on that watershed parcel. And it's right at the boundary of the primary Big Basin parcel, which is about 85 acres and snakes along the highway. The watershed parcel is behind the snake all the way up top of the mountain. So the way we're going to deal with that is a lot line adjustment, because it's right there on the boundary, and we are told things can change, but we are told preliminarily that we shouldn't have much of a concern about the retention of water rights, number one, and number two, with overcomplicating the transaction too much in terms of like covenants and servitudes. The bottom line is that, as we understand it right now, the state water law is more or less protective enough that we don't really need to get too much into that second level of analysis on, do we need to restrict certain behaviors on the parcel, for instance? These are all questions we're considering. But especially when you're looking at post and sempervirens with a target of state parks as your acquirer, you don't have to be as worried potentially. But bottom line, the water rights themselves that are permitted, only one of them is actually on that parcel, and we're going to lot line adjust it off. And on the second level, we're not too worried given the protections that already exist in the state law with respect to, other regulating that we would have to do in that transaction.
Any questions here in the room? Looks like we've exhausted the questions online.
We have.
Okay.
I feel like Dave wants to answer another question.
I suppose just to add color to the question that was just put forth, the zoning and environmental protections of the watershed would also be something the county would be very, very closely looking at. So if it was sold to a private property owner, the county would not support something that would degrade the quality of that watershed in any way, shape, or form.
Along those lines, what if it were sold to, say, a developer who wanted to put in a number of developments that would affect capacity?
Yeah, so there wouldn't, the county has an existing ordinance that does not allow for the expansion and development of a property like that to create hundreds of homes or something of that nature, right? So it's based on the land use designation. It's pretty secure that that isn't going to become some giant new development of homes that would somehow impact your water quality. In theory, probably a home or a home in an ADU might be able to be developed there. I don't know the exact zoning, but from an order of magnitude for the security of the water supply, it wouldn't be something that would affect overall water. Any other questions?
If there aren't any more, so you said that you're talking to anyone who is interested in talking to you about purchasing, and you mentioned Cypress was interested. Are there other entities that have expressed notable interest in moving forward with exploring the possibility of purchasing or otherwise consolidating?
No.
Not yet. Okay, if there aren't any other questions in the room, Nick, did you want to, anyone else want to make any sort of closing comments? Supervisor?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to start off by thanking Nick for that presentation and for everybody in the room who's contributed to this process so far. I just personally learned a lot about the progress that's been going on, and I feel like I get briefed as I'm still learning about what's going on, and I just feel really grateful. I can't imagine that every court receiver is as diligent and thorough as you. I mean, it was really the work you're doing is incredible. And to Milestone, well, that's unfortunate because you could really feel the passion and commitment that he has for the water delivery service, and it's feels like this challenge is really turning a page into an opportunity and a space of possibility and potential. And so I think that's really positive for this part of our district. It's very important part of our county. And so I want to thank all of you for your patience and your collaboration and support as the county and our partners navigate this and get us to solutions. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for the good questions. And I see one more question just popped up there, and since we have like a few more minutes, we should go for it. So, but I'm not going to come back and say thanks again. So closure, and then I'll let you sign us off.
Okay, we just received a question. If there will be another fire, will water system have water for firefighters? It was not the case 5 years ago. What changed?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really important question, and all I can say as we sit in the firehouse, is that I have had many conversations with the chief about this. GEI has included fire readiness and suppression capacity as one of the tenets of their source evaluation. So they've calculated what we're going to need and not just what we do need based on a full fire resilience capability. So all I can say right now is that no, we have not built additional hydrants, but we've started to have the conversations with the fire chief and with the engineers and with the funding partners about getting there. So
I think it's also important to recognize that no water system in the state is capable of supplying enough water to combat a wildfire, right? As evidenced by Palisades and others. So I think what's important that Nick and Cypress and Satya with the feasibility study are doing is trying to provide a system that can provide water suppression at your home. So if there's a structure fire that starts in your home, if you're rebuilding, or if you're remodeling and installing a hydrant system and a sprinkler system, that your water system provides enough pressure and volume to address a structure fire in your home. That's the first. And then a hydrant system, ideally over time, that allows a firefighter to hook up and put out your home if it's on fire, or your neighbors. Those are the types of goals I think that the receiver and Cypress and Satya are trying to achieve from a fire standpoint. But I think it's just really important for people to know that, like, it's something I think about all the time. The reliability of the system is most important. Yes, the firefighters will access that water to the greatest extent possible, but it's never going to be a system that supplies enough to put out a wildland fire for all of those connections.
another thing I'll mention is that we have been keeping the reservoir up on, up right by the Jameson tank. You probably know it. We've been keeping that full as we can. Now we're not given the status of, we don't have a surface water plant, so we're not allowed theoretically to be making use of surface water. So everybody knows that. But, and I'm just open about this with anybody who asks. So I have not taken an affirmative measure to turn off the spigot that is, funneling surface water into that reservoir, because I understand that to be important to the fire chief, to be able to dip the hoses and back up the trucks. So,
There are no other questions online.
That's great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Have a great evening, and just know that we will send a recording of this meeting to you via email, and it will be available on YouTube. Thank you so much for attending, and have a great night.